Ah, there you are. Hello. I'm going to talk about conspiracy truths and are you addicted? I'm also going to talk about how to recognize if you are suffering from conspiracy trauma. Now, I realize that might be a term that I just made up. It kind of came out of nowhere into my mind, but it's very, very relevant, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about it as we go through this video. So first of all, welcome. This is my weekly video, Energy Report. It's the week beginning the 24th of April 2023. My name is Karen from karenturpin.com. Now, I've been called a conspiracy theorist for more than 20 years now. And those of us that have been called that, we also know that most, if not all, probably 99.9% of our theories have now all been proven to be truth. So really, they are not theories anymore. They are conspiracy truths, certainly as far as I'm concerned. Now, I wish I'd been wrong about some of the things that we saw as a theory at the time. Maybe then we could have all lived in a peaceful utopian world. But, let's just look around us now and see that this is not peaceful. This is not utopian. And, all the evidence has shown us that in our reality, those conspiracy theories are actually truth. Just look around you and see. So it was sometime after I had my first part of my spiritual awakening. So we know that we don't just suddenly wake up and know everything. Well, we never know everything anyway. But we have layers and layers of spiritual awakening. It's not just, wow, I am awake now. Anyway. It was some point when I started to wake up spiritually that I began to see things and know things. And I don't know where these visions and this knowing came from, to be perfectly honest with you. But I really got this vision and this knowing of a time that we were moving into, that we're heading into. And everything that I picked up then is correct so far. I have seen horrors, let me assure you. But, and this is the important part, I have seen beauty, I have seen peace, and I have seen us kind of get to the other side of this, and it's a beautiful life. It's important that I say that because as dark as things look and are clearly, knowing that I've been correct about the darkness that we've been going through also gives me that belief that what I know about light and love and peace that we're moving into, I know that that is correct too. There's no reason to presume or to expect rather that I can be correct about the dark but not correct about the light. So that knowing of that light and that beautiful space that we're moving into, it's a timeline really, that beautiful timeline that we're moving into, that gives me hope, and I want you to hold on to that. Don't get lost in the dark, please, because I have seen a beautiful place as well. In around 2006, I had a dream or a vision of these machines that were everywhere, flying around in the sky, and they were watching people. They were following us. We literally couldn't escape them from seeing where we were. And they could fire on us and kill us. And it was all about controlling us. It was very unsettling because I knew it was coming. I had fear come up, to be honest, about that. My fear was, how can I get away from these things? It was what I now know to be drones. But back then, that wasn't around then. Now I know, because I've researched it since, I know that military had already invented drones, but they weren't out there, with the people. These were used for military operations at that point. So I was seeing these drones, as I now know they are, but they were following us in the street. They were watching us in towns and when we were having gatherings. And that is exactly what we have going on now with surveillance. It felt very sinister to me then, because even then I knew that this was all about taking away our freedom and our rights. At that time, I also saw the torture of people, particularly children, in deep underground bases, which I now know are DUMBs, the deep underground military bases. I didn't know that term then. I just saw that this was happening underground. I saw them also injecting the people with toxic compounds that would take over the human body and allow dark forces to enter. And the agenda I sensed at that time was to dislodge the soul or our spirit from our body, to disconnect us. Now that has all played out to be true. I also saw the effect of electromagnetic radiation. I saw the chemtrails. I saw what the fluoride in the water was doing. This is a long time ago, early 2000s. Now I know we have the internet, but there wasn't the same volume of information around at that point. And the point is, it wasn't well spoken about like it is now. Literally, if you don't know that these things exist, you can't just put a Google search in and find them. You have to kind of know what you're going to Google search for. So what was coming in my visions and my knowing at that time was very scary, of a timeline that we were moving into, which we called the Armageddon timeline. And here we are, and everything has played out to be true. So I've seen that. I've seen much more as well. And I've watched it play out over these years, and that's 20 years, right? And that was very traumatic to know that that was coming. Hugely traumatic, particularly because there was nobody I could go and talk to about this at the time. Over the years, maybe 2010 or so, I started to meet other people that knew this, that had these same visions. But for many, many years, I kind of carried this alone. And yeah, I was the lunatic in the family, right? Anyway, thank goodness, I could also see at the same time a beautiful potential timeline of this new earth. I knew that we had to move through this time to get to this new earth. And really, that's what has kept me going, because without that, I'm pretty sure I would not have wanted to stay on this planet when all I could see was doom and gloom. And to be honest, it's part of why I speak about this topic now, to give hope and to shine the light into the darkest days. I've seen the dark. It's proven to be accurate. I've seen the light, and I have no reason to doubt that that is where we're moving into, if we are aligned to it. Now, I admit there are still some bumps in the road to come. I'm not saying that we're there and that we're flying yet, but I do feel that this is a really important time for us to come together now, to support each other and to help each other to stay on track. Someone always has to have that higher vision of where we're aiming for, and I'm not the only one, of course, but I have seen that timeline. I know where we're headed, but it's about frequency. We have to align to it. So let's talk about trauma and frequency. Now, we know the feelings associated with trauma, the anger, the apathy, the grief and the fear. We know that those are low vibrations, low frequencies. And we know that trauma puts us into a state of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Those are the four F's we talk about when we talk about trauma. Now, these are all fear-based feelings. When you are in trauma, you are in a vibration of fear. In that vibration of fear, we can feel very powerless, helpless, oftentimes very hopeless. And I've talked in other videos too about the black pill, when people are black-pilled. And this is kind of that state where they feel completely hopeless. There's no way through this. We're all doomed, that kind of thing. Now, remember that a population that is in fear is easier to control. This is what this whole agenda has been. They're showing up on TV every day to program the people further. I've talked about that. ad infinitum at some of my other videos, so you can go back and check those. We also know that fear divides us and it fuels our distrust of each other. And we've seen this play out before in World War II, for example, with the Jews and all of that stuff, the Nazis. We've also seen that play out over the last 3 years. Look at the amount of divide there was between us. People didn't come together to support each other. It's like, oh, you're not doing the right thing. You're putting people at risk. So there was a divide. We've seen massive amounts of agendas now, with these trans agendas and the climate change agendas, and all of that is to divide people, right? And put everybody in fear. Now, when we're in fear, that's a low vibration. It's very difficult to feel hopeful for the future. You can't see anything positive coming at all, and you certainly can't align energetically to it. A beautiful, love-filled, peaceful, harmonious future timeline is a high vibration. It's a vibration of love and hope and positivity and enlightenment, all of that stuff, which feels beautiful. But when you're in a state of trauma, when you're in fear, you can't get there. You can't get there. You can even poo-poo its existence often. It's like, oh my God, don't just be realistic. Look at the shitstorm that we're living in. That's a low vibration. You can't just suddenly shift up a gear like that unless you're conscious and unless you're choosing it. So in order to shift into that new timeline, we have to align to it, in my opinion anyway, in my experience. And this is why we need to really understand that this is a spiritual war that we're in, a psycho-spiritual war, really, because our minds are so powerful at creating our future reality. So we're talking about quantum, visioning it, stepping into it. I know that all sounds pie in the sky, but at the end of the day, this is what they don't teach us in schools, right? So we already have to open our mind and have a shift of consciousness before we could even say, yes, we create our reality with our mind. So we've already got to have a bit of a shift to even open up to that potential. But this is also why this dark agenda is so hell-bent on getting into your head, to take over your thoughts, to keep you suppressed and programmed. Why do you think they have you for so many years in schools and colleges and universities programming you? They don't want free thinkers. They don't want you opening your mind and shifting your consciousness. So the news reports promoting constant fear. And, we all know that when you're worried about something, you just can't get it out of your head. You can't switch that off. Their fear agenda has taken over your consciousness, and it was exactly designed that way. If you are in fear every time you step outside your door, well, then you're not going to be thinking creatively, and you're not going to be able to raise the vibration to have that next shift of consciousness. So, when you are consumed by your fear, your worries, your concerns, your fear of survival, really, there's also a divide that begins to happen inside of you. It's like a split between your head and your heart. And your nervous system now is on overdrive constantly because you're no longer cohesive. In fact, you are fragmented, you are traumatized. And with all that we see on TV and on social medias and things like that, the sheer volume of the information that we're taking in causes a massive overstimulation of our nervous system, and particularly if it's very fear-based and negative and dark information. So we are literally putting ourselves into a state of trauma sometimes through the consumption of particular types of material. Now, I know you have to be aware of what's going on in the world. You know, I've never been a fan of putting your head in the sand and ignoring everything. You need to be aware. However, when we are in trauma, it's kind of like a PTSD, right? We are really locked into a state of high alert. We are constantly scanning our surroundings for signs of danger, a threat to our survival, a threat to our existence. And I get that, and I've been there. And we can actually get addicted to being in that state. It really wreaks havoc on our health, obviously, to be in such a state of stress for a prolonged period of time, and that's the state that they've had many people in over the last 3 years. When you are in that state, though, you have to find a way to decompress that works for you. So there's a lot of things that can help with soothing your nervous system. You know, you can look at things about trauma and things like that. If you like, go and talk to somebody if you really feel that you're affected with this. So you must find a way to decompress. You need to let go, you need to raise your vibration, and you need to come back up, if possible, at least to something like a state of courage. Because we are spiritual warriors, you and I. We need to come to a state of neutrality, which means being grounded. When you're in trauma, it's almost like you kind of shoot out of your body. Dissociation means that you're not in your body. When you're not in your body, you also can't work to embody your soul, which is actually part of what you're here to do. Maybe the whole thing of what you're here to do as well. We also need to come to a state of willingness as well to take action when required. So that you're not checked out, because when you're dissociated, you're kind of a little bit ineffective. You can't act in the right ways very often. The people, for example, at the freedom rallies, you know, they were displaying a state of courage, a state of willingness to stand up for what they believe in, for truth. However, many people didn't attend those rallies that might have liked to, because they were literally in a state of fear or complacency, and that doesn't help either, to be in those states. So the first steps of moving forward out of that state of helpless and hopeless, and those states are often associated with PTSD. That was my weekly report available. Oh, it's a large number. We don't want to look at that. Screen time, right? Let me get back to where I was. The state of helpless and hopeless is often associated with PTSD and depression too, because many people are depressed. They don't realise that that's come from being in a state of trauma, and that trauma response is often that feeling of being shut down and a feeling of powerless as well. However, we are not powerless. Let me rewind. We are the ones that chose to come here, to be here right at this time. If you could go back, rewind yourself to the moment that you said, yes, I'll come and I'll make a difference in the world, and I'll come at this time, it's because you are a spiritual warrior. You are meant to be stepping up now. It's our time now. And actually, if you're even listening to this, then you are one of the ones, right? You wouldn't even listen to this if it wasn't you. You'd have clicked off long ago. This is exactly why you're here, to help us create the new Earth timeline. And it's a beautiful one because I've seen it and I've already experienced it. Now, the problem is that when we are in this fight and fight state, because we are on conscious alert all the time, it actually has an addictive quality. Our nervous system is locked, it is in a locked on position, and it's kind of fueled by that adrenaline, that constant adrenaline running through our body from the drama and the fear intel that we're taking in from the internet, social media, all of that stuff, and of course from what we're seeing around us. In Victoria, in Australia, some of the things that the people witnessed and experienced there is horrific. And I've actually had a few clients from Victoria who are in a state of trauma because of what they experienced in their day-to-day living down there. Now, when we're in that constant on state with the adrenaline rushing through us all the time, we can consciously say, right, wow, oh, I'm stressed, I need to back off a little bit. But the problem is that when we back off, when we try to withdraw, because we recognize that we're overloaded, we do actually begin to go into a state of withdrawal, like with any addiction. Even getting off of coffee, right? You can feel it when you try to get it out of your system. So what can happen then is the body can go into a kind of panic state because it's not getting its adrenaline fix, right? As well as that, because we haven't got the adrenaline there, all of our feelings start to come up again because the adrenaline suppresses those feelings so that we can do what is necessary for survival. Fight and flight, the get up and run away from the bear kind of thing, right? But as soon as the adrenaline starts to slow because we've withdrawn from, this fear stuff on the internet, for example, when we've withdrawn from that, we begin to release some of the feelings and the thoughts that we were suppressing when we were in that running away state. And what comes up then, because we're in trauma, is the fear, it's the betrayal, it's the anger, it's the grief. And maybe we find ourselves in that powerless and helpless place again. And it doesn't feel good to be there. So we try to escape from it. We want a pick-me-up. We want a dopamine hit because that makes us feel good. And how can we get that really easily? Well, we just plug back in to social media, or we research a little bit more of these conspiracy truths or theories. And then we frighten the pants off of ourselves again, and then up comes the adrenaline rush again, and then we're back. But the interesting thing is, we tell ourselves that we're getting informed when we research all of this. But the truth is that fear is an addiction. The fear state is addictive because your adrenaline's pumping and you feel revved up, and actually you feel quite alive, don't you? You're charging on these conspiracies, and we call it passion. Yes, we're passionate about it. Sometimes we feel panicky, actually, when the adrenaline slows down, so we search for the next hit, the next high. It's an addiction. We also feel passionate to inform everyone about it, about what's being done to us, about what the agenda is. Even that ties in to your dopamine addiction because it feels good to inform people. You're helping to wake the masses. And you can't not, right? You're here to speak the truth, to inform people, to wake people up before it's too late. And I get all of that because I kind of did all of that for years, tried to wake people up, and I was in a desperate state. I needed to wake everyone up quickly before we were completely doomed. But I realized now that I was kind of in a state of trauma and desperation. I know that you can't wake people up and make them see anything until they're ready to see it. But that's our fear, right? That almost desperate state. We have to wake everyone up because our lives depend upon it. It is an existential crisis. That's what we think. But it's all driven by our fear, and that fear is addictive. And it's admirable to try to wake people up. It also takes us away from ourselves because we're in our own process of awakening. And it takes us away from ourselves when we spend all of our time trying to wake people up, because we're actually out of our body, out there talking to people, trying to wake people up. But our process is our inner work. So it becomes a bit of a distraction to us. And even that can cause a split within ourselves, because we are here, we're meant to be awakening, we're meant to be processing through our own stuff, our shadow, so that we can evolve, so that we can be soul embodied eventually, because that's the goal. But when we're out there running around trying to inform everyone else, it's another distraction from not being in here doing our own personal journey work. Wherever there is a split, there is stress, and we are not whole. So if our consciousness is splitting off to inform people, if our consciousness is splitting off because we're in trauma at what we've researched, we are not in here, we are not whole. And this is really important. We have to get into our body. And for years, I've tried to wake people up, desperately at times. But people are only going to wake up when they're ready. And this is important as well. Not everybody will wake up this time around. We are going to lose some people. They won't be going forwards in the way that we're going forwards. And we have to accept that. And yet I still speak up because it's important. I don't do it, I don't grab them and shake them anymore. But I put my word out, and I trust that the people that are meant to hear it will hear it. Talking about hearing it, I can hear a tradesman next door making a lot of noise, so I hope it's not disturbing what you can hear of me. The more we try to push people to wake up, the more their cognitive dissonance ramps up, and they actually attack us. I've noticed a big shift in the last couple of years since this thing came. There is a split, and the people that have been affected by this seem to be, I would actually say almost, not all of them, but almost hostile towards us. There is as if a hostile force has come through and is pushing back against us. That's interesting. And we need to remember that we are at war. This is a spiritual war. You can't go to the other force in an army. If you were in the army, you can't go to the other army and say, hey, you should be on our team, just leave that team and come back with us. That doesn't work. They're actually going to shoot you on sight. So we have to be aware of this as well. There is some weirdness going on. As I say, I call it hostile force. But also remember that in any army, there are always going to be the deserters, the resistance, and the dissidents. So we don't know how this is all going to play out. Somebody that seems to be massively against our conspiracy truths at this point may become a deserter and move over to our side, if you like to call it sides. We shouldn't really have sides, should we? But we kind of do at the moment. So what I think is that we need to be really internally guided about this. We have to be a bit discerning about when to speak up, when to share our message, when to keep your mouth shut, when to fly under the radar. There is a strength in numbers, and I'm grateful that you are here with me right now and that we're doing this together. And let me also say that our numbers are growing. Definitely our numbers are growing. And going forwards, yes, we will still need to learn to dodge some bullets, a little bit like Neo in the Matrix. Because it does definitely feel a bit hostile out there at times. And there are things that, in my opinion, we should no longer support and definitely not condone. And I think it's important to stand up for this truth. When we can see what the agendas are, and I've talked about them in various other videos, I'll probably talk about them in the future too. But when we can see that there is an agenda pushing something, literally all our heckles should be up about that. when you're in line with your heart, with your truth, when you're in alignment with your soul, you kind of know what's right and what's wrong, what's real and what's fake, what's manipulated. You know what coercion is. And that is what you should be taking notice of and saying, there's an agenda for this and it just feels off. Trust that. That's your intuition. It's important. I believe that standing up for truth is important, and it comes across far better when you do it from a place that is grounded and stable. So that could mean that you have to wean yourself off of needing to spend so much time researching that dark agenda, and maybe focus on moving yourself into a lighter, more balanced state of being and getting yourself out of that fight and flight state, calming your nervous system. And I don't mean going into denial or trying to bypass what's really happening here. It's real, you know it, you're aware of it, but what I'm encouraging you to do is to soothe your nervous system. I've known for a long time that when people wake up to what's really going on here, they are likely to go into trauma. They're likely to fragment. They are likely to have a mental breakdown. And actually, this is what we're seeing. Now, that is true for any spiritual awakening at any point, but it's probably times 1,000 now because of the intensity of this timeline and what we're going through now. And as well, the importance of this particular time. There's no reason, there's no mistake why people are waking up now in the height of this extreme, right? So we know that they are likely to fragment, to have a mental breakdown. This is why we really can't shove everything that we know down their throats. Literally, their heads will explode, right? We have to ease them in gently. And so we have to use discernment about what you can say to whom and when and how. And if we are grounded and stable and not, I called it passionate, but maybe that's frantic. If we can deliver the information in a very calm, stable, down-to-earth fashion, it is likely to kind of just slip under their radar a little bit too. So it's also important to say you don't have to fragment and have a mental breakdown as you open up to more of this. You can do it gently and carefully. Reach out for support if you need some support, because I can help you to wrap your head around everything that's going on. I can help you to do that carefully, and I can help you to do it in a way that you don't go into trauma, that you don't fragment further. I can keep you grounded, and I can give you some tips on how to cope with what's really going on here. Looking at it from the bigger spiritual perspective of why you're here right now and why you are waking up right now. So there are ways, as I say, to help you through that. You don't have to have a nervous breakdown. And in fact, you shouldn't. Please reach out for some support if you are feeling overwhelmed by all of this. At the end of the day, this is about our spiritual awakening. It's about the embodiment of your soul. That's what I do, but also remember that that is what you've chosen to do. That's what you're here for. The more you embody your soul and know your value and your worth, and you begin to believe and trust in yourself more, this is how you actually get soul aligned, so that you really know what your mission and purpose is. So it's really important part, to bring all of these parts together carefully. So, as I say, please reach out and ask for help if you need that from me or from somebody else that you feel can support you. I also have a class coming this Thursday, the 27th of April, all about helping you to discern what is the difference between your intuition, your inner guidance telling you something versus your head telling you something. because that causes a split, right? The head and the heart, remember, as I mentioned it earlier on before. So this is all about bringing you into cohesion, head, heart, soul aligned, helping you to feel whole and complete, basically, through these most difficult times. And I do feel that the more stable we can be, the more whole and aligned we can be, the more powerfully we can project into the future, see that timeline, create it. Because remember, we create so much of this with our energy. I said early 2020, that whatever we focus on, wherever we put our energy, we are feeding energy into that, and that whole thing will grow. Well, if everybody had looked at this whole agenda at the start of 2020 and said, nah, sorry, that's BS, that's just part of their agenda, I'm not playing it, we would be in a very different position now. But people didn't do that. They didn't withdraw their energy. In fact, they fed it, and it grew bigger. And the people that put that into place sat back and rubbed their hands, and they said, we got them. We know how to control these people, and that's through fear. So it's time now to soothe your body, withdraw from that fear, get yourself stable and healed. And that, yes, will require some of you facing your shadow, right? All the fears, and there may be some guilt there about some things that you said or did, or some regrets about what you've done. You know, I don't know what you've got, but all of that is part of spiritual awakening anyway. So you could even turn this whole thing round and say, wow, I was kind of forced into a spiritual awakening because of their crappy agenda in 2020, but let me make the most of it. Let me not go down in fear and helpless, hopeless. Let me say, wow, okay, I'm going to use this as a way to turn it all around, grow my spiritual awareness, expand my consciousness so that I can connect with my soul, embody my soul, because then I know that I've achieved what I came here for. So, hope that helps. I would love to see you in one of my classes coming up. Just DM me if you want details. Otherwise, links in the bio and all of that stuff. Reach out if you are feeling that you need support, because this is difficult times that we're going through. All I can say again, let me repeat, I saw the darkness, I saw it play out, I was accurate with what I saw. We're living in it over the last few years, 3 years particularly, but 10 years really. Let me also say, I saw the new Earth timeline. I saw us on it, I know what it feels like, and I know it's available to us. So that's where we really want to be heading to. If you need support to get there, reach out. It's great to have you with us on this journey, and there's power in numbers. Let's wake up, let's just move forward, and let's create this thing. Have a great week. See you next time.